Episode 39 with Bethany Crouch on the 9 Point Start the Dream podcast.
Welcome to 9 Point Started with a Dream podcast. Our goal is to showcase the stories of athletes and the community that supports them by being authentic about their journey. Here's your host, Jacoby Gillum.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This episode we have Bethany Crouch. It's a fun one here. We kind of go through the life after sports type of a theme. And we went through how her journey from the early days of gymnastics to what she did in college and then what she's doing today with her sports story and through working for Sacramento State. And it kind of just shows how it kind of goes full circle sometimes when it comes to our journey, kind of how our stories lead us to what we end up doing in our careers. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get to it. So Bethany, the question I ask everyone that comes on is, when you were younger as an athlete, what was one of your bigger dreams or goals you wanted to achieve?
When I was an athlete, I think everyone kind of starts off with the big dream of the Olympics or playing pro. And I remember watching the 1996 Olympic team and just thinking like, that would be pretty cool. I mean, granted, I was 6 years old, so sounded like a great idea. But as I kind of went through my gymnastics journey, because I started gymnastics at 6 and was in it for roughly 15 years. But I would say around age maybe 10, 11, 12-ish, when you kind of start thinking about college, I was introduced to the thought of collegiate gymnastics. And as soon as I heard of it, I was like, yep, that's my path. It was no longer pursuing an elite track or, thinking that I would maybe like either give up high school or be homeschooled so I could pursue the Olympic route. It was just from that point on, something inside me was like, nope, college gymnastics is where I will take this journey.
So what about gymnastics, though, kind of drew to that? There's all these other sports you could have kind of pursued or looked into. What about gymnastics instead? That's the one.
So apparently when I was 3 years old, my mother says, I was doing cartwheels and had a watch me moment with my mom. And I did a cartwheel with no hands and scared her half to death. And she was like, we need to do something about this. So I went to gymnastics like a part of my preschool for a little bit. And then I went to a different school, didn't do gymnastics. And my mom realized like in kindergarten, first grade, I was so shy, like so incredibly shy. And she was like, we got to get you involved with something else other than school. So she put me back into gymnastics because I had fun with it in preschool. There were definitely moments as a kid, because I was just so incredibly shy, that I would hang onto the seatbelt, like just screaming, and my mom would be pulling me out, like dragging me out of the car. But then once I got there, it was so much fun. But yeah, I think my mom had a lot to do with it. My parents, who initially put me in gymnastics, and my mom was a gymnast and cheerleader in her day, so my stature fit it well. I enjoyed it. I was pretty good at it. So that was the main sport for me. I was never, for some reason as a kid, I don't recall thinking like, oh, I want to try soccer, or let's try softball, or I want to run. It was always gymnastics. Not until later on, which I'm sure we'll get into, that did I look outside of gymnastics.
So in those early days, did it kind of help you kind of break out of your shell a little bit, kind of help you?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I did. I really did, because it was a place where, and I'm sure you've experienced this before too, when you are with a team and with other athletes, you just have a bond that develops and a connection. And so, yeah, it definitely pulled me out of my shell. At gym, I was still super shy at school, but in gymnastics, like that's where I shined, and I was able to have be almost just like completely me. So it was definitely like my zone, more so than school ever was, but it did help in some regard. Yes.
It's funny how it works out that way, because I was similar, like in like school, I was kind of like the shy guy and the kind of talkative, but like when kind of work, I was able to just be a different person. So
yeah.
So how did you, I guess I guess for you it's kind of natural, but how did you kind of manage to have the personality in gymnastics, but then kind of go back to being the reserve Bethany once you left the facility?
You know, I'm not sure. I think it was just the environment that made me comfortable, and I was good in the gymnastics environment, and you could have fun and express yourself, where, school, is very traditional, sit down, learn, do your work. And I didn't always click with other kids at school. And I think because I was so scared and so shy, I always was like, I don't know what to say, or what if whatever I say is good enough. So I was definitely in my head a lot as a kid. And I think gymnastics just provided that platform where, you know, there was support involved from coaches, teammates understood. They understood the love of the sport. They understood, having just fun and being silly. And yeah, it's interesting that you asked me these types of questions, because I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. So, it really, like, my demeanor in school probably didn't change until I became a junior in high school. So all through my years, I was the quiet one, or so you're so shy, and that was just who I was, and how I processed information. Everything's very internal. So, and I was by natural an introvert, but yeah, it was just how I was, and gymnastics pulled it out of me. So it was really that environment that somehow lit my soul on fire, and I could be me. So it's pretty
That's
cool.
awesome. Love that. So you got this dream of, making it to the next level. At what point did you realize that it was possible? Like, was it always in your mind that this is going to happen? Because, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of realize your talent level versus the expectation. How do you kind of always say this is going to be my dream and it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think, from that age where I realized that college was a possibility, I always had it in my mind, and I was like, at the time, UC Santa Barbara had a team, and I was like, that's where I'm going. And unfortunately, their program was done after 2011. So that was always like my dream, or excuse me, not 2011. When was that? That was 2001. Excuse me. I was close. Had the one at the end. But I always had a dream to, like, be in Southern California, to go to a college, to be on a gymnastics team at that level. And I think I always knew it was possible. And I never had a moment where I doubted that I would not get to college and do gymnastics in some capacity, whether that was walk on a team, no matter what level, division 3, 2, 1, any of them. I never doubted that would happen. What the hurdles that came along the way was that I became extremely burnt out from gymnastics. So much so that after my sophomore year of high school, I had just finished competing at Junior Olympic Nationals, and they used to do what's called college bound meets. So you would compete in front of a group of all of the college coaches that were able to be there. And so I did that meet, had a really good meet, and then I was so burnt out, I quit after that season, because I mentally just was tapped, and I wanted a life, right? So you hear athletes that are like, I just want a life. I want to be normal. I don't want to go to the gym for 5-6 hours a day, and I want to go to prom, and I want to go to homecoming, and maybe have a boyfriend, like, do all the normal teenager things. So that, really is something that I wanted. So I quit gymnastics, and I joined my high school cheerleading team. And I always tell this story because to attest to how quiet I was in school. When I joined the cheer team, my junior year of high school, so I've been going to high school there for 2 years, people asked me where I moved from. And, there was a rumor that went around that I was a military kid and I just moved to the town and joined the cheer team, like, because I was just so kept to myself for the most part, that when I finally showed up in high school as someone that was going to be outgoing and commit to a team at the school, that it was a surprise to everyone. But yeah, even then, I would say a couple months, let's see, maybe 6-7 months after I quit, and I was cheering and it was football season, I would say that fall, college letters started coming in the mail. And I was like, interesting. Because in my head, my 16-year-old brain, I was thinking, I quit. So like all these college coaches know that I don't do gymnastics anymore, because at clearly 16, the world revolves around me or myself. So I didn't anticipate even being contacted for college gymnastics.
So going back to that, just the
Mm-hmm.
you walked away, and I know
Mm-hmm.
when you're in school, like I was friends with gymnasts and how much they practice. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're getting the routines right, getting the
Yeah.
the rings and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a all day thing for them.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine as a high schooler that how do you think athletes can kind of manage that? Especially in that school
Mm-hmm.
that's really 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, gymnastics is one of those sports that it's all year round. You have season, but summer it requires just as many hours as season does. So for athletes that are in sports settings like that, I look back and I wish I had a mentor. I wish I had found either in someone outside of my realm. So not necessarily like an older teammate, but maybe a gymnast that had experienced these things before. So first find a mentor, because the feelings that you're feeling are normal in most regard. It's just that we chalk it up like we shouldn't be having the feelings, when in fact it's very much a part of the sport. So I would have said having a mentor for me, or a place to go where people reassured me that it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to want to quit. It's okay to like dread going to practice, and it's not bad. So I think that's a good step. Second, like if you can level with your coaches that you're going to leave early on Friday practice so you can go to that football game, or you're going to be involved with this club in high school, because there's got to be more of an effort. And I think this especially exists today. There's got to be more of an effort of developing your entire identity, not just basing it all around your sport or that you're an athlete. You're so much more than that. And as we both know, you're going to do so many more things beyond sports. But I believe that if you incorporate that balance earlier and spend some time outside of your sport too, developing other identities, that it would help in the journey to staying in your sport. And it'll ultimately help after your sport.
Yeah, I learned the hard way on that one. When you're just one pillar and you lose that pillar for a little bit, you can really kind of just feel the whole foundation just shaking, right?
Totally.
So,
yeah.
So you left a little bit, you started getting offers.
Started getting offers, or letters in the mail, and then emails, and started being contacted around the time that colleges can start to reach out to you. And I was like, you know what? I should probably go back. I should try this out. This whole like college gymnastics thing that I thought I would, eventually try, until I, had the burnout happen. But so I went back to gymnastics. I would say this was in the spring of my junior year. So wrapping up junior year. I go back to gymnastics. I train so hard because, and I'm sure any athlete will tell you, when you take a significant time off your sport, and significant time, you think like, oh, a couple years. No, like even 6 months can be a huge difference in getting back on track. So it was so tough, but I did it. And I was at my club gym that I had left prior, and I was able to compete in some meets and actually qualify to regionals that year. And then I competed in regionals and got like first alternate for nationals. And I remember just being so upset with myself. And I look back and I'm like, you quit for like 6 months and then just decided to come back. So I did that for a while, and I went through summer training again, and I think I went through all the way my start of my senior year. I was doing cheer and gym. So I was doing both, which was definitely a challenge because it kind of felt like burning the candle at both ends. And you're like, when you're at cheer practice, you're like, oh, I should be at gym practice, or, vice versa. So I was trying to do both and balance that. And then I came to a point where I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep doing both anymore. So I quit cheer. And that was definitely like dramatic in high school, in the high school years, to quit the team and whatnot. Because we're a very competitive team, and it was, a great experience for sure. But when I walked on the team, I came with all my gymnastic skills, obviously. So I quit cheer. It was really, really tough, and on the school side when I did so. And then a few months later, I had another breakdown. I had a moment where I was just not happy. It was a culmination of things, but again, I felt the burnout and the why. Why am I here? Why am I putting myself through these hard times? Because it doesn't have to be like this. For some reason, as a teenager, I was always like, I don't have to be unhappy. Like, I can choose to be happy. And I at that time saw my unhappiness stemming from burnout from my sport. So I think I went through the end of fall season. And at this point in time, I had verbally committed to Sacramento State and had done the official visits, talked to the college coaches, but I had chosen Sacramento State. And I ended up quitting gymnastics again and turning down my scholarship that I had been offered.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, looking, if you would have asked me as a 10, 12-year-old, do you think you'll quit gymnastics twice and then, maybe go back to it in college? I would have been like, no, that won't happen. But it did. So I quit. And this was my senior year, probably around Christmas time. This is when I quit gymnastics and turned down my scholarship. And it was the lowest point for me, and a very dark time, because I had lost that identity again. And not only was I lost my gymnast identity, but I was no longer a cheerleader either. And I didn't know what college I was going to go to. So for being someone that always had somewhat of a plan, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a vision. So I spent a couple months where I was just extremely depressed, didn't know what to do. And then had a moment, and I can't really explain where or when, but I had this clarity of, you should give college gymnastics a try. Even if you walk on, just give it a try. Because at the time, I had a former teammate on the Sacramento State gymnastics team. And I was like, that would be fun to compete with her and, can pick back up what I had left when I basically quit the first time around gymnastics. So I reached out to the Sac State gymnastics coach. And I was like, Coach, if I just, keep in shape, stay in shape, I'll work on my skills somehow. Is there a spot for me on the team? And he's like, yes, the spot is still here for you, and so is your scholarship. So that doesn't happen very often. And I'm incredibly grateful for him that he still wanted me to be a part of the team, even after I turned him down. So I went to another gym to practice because the gym that I had left twice, like club gym, it was like I was quitting on my family. So I didn't exactly feel welcome back to the initial gym for various reasons. But I went and practiced at what had turned into like a cheerleading gym. So they had like a beam, they had a floor that was super hard. You know, there was a vault there. So basically all I did was I stayed in shape, did my skills as best I could with the equipment that I had. And then at some point in time, reached back out to my club coaches because I really wanted to go back and train at the club that I had been at. And my club coaches were just incredible people and cared so much about me and my gymnastics that when I did leave, like it was hard on everyone. But they let me come back to the gym. And so I trained the rest of summer at my original club gym and then went to college, went to Sac State in the fall.
So that's a journey right there.
That's a journey.
That was
That was long-winded.
no, that's good
Yeah.
though. So going back to like I can relate to that whole feeling of losing your identity and kind of just feeling lost and don't know who you are, that depression phase. Did you kind of deal with it alone? Or did you have people around you that kind of helped you get out of that funk?
I would say that the main people who were around me were my family. Like, so my mom, my dad, my brother, I think they tried their absolute best to help coach me out of it. However, I didn't have, again, like that mentor that I wish I would have had, who had been through sport, who had, experienced burnout. So, when like parents help it, especially as a teenager, you're like,
Yeah,
okay.
you don't get it, and it's like,
Yeah, right. No matter if they're right or not, it's just, it's just how it is. So I wouldn't say I was coached, but I was coached through time, like just time spent away from my sport, time spent away from cheer, time spent away from the plan of, graduate high school, go to college on a gymnastics, scholarship, or, just be a part of a team. When I didn't have that vision anymore, I lost sight of everything. So, yeah, to answer your question, there wasn't one person that was coaching me through it. I will say when I went back to my, the cheer gym that I actually went to, that was the second gym that I had started at. So when I was starting club around like 6 years old, that's the gym I went to, and it had evolved and changed owners and whatnot. So when I went there to just train and keep in shape, there was a gal there who had made it to the elite level and had coached. She was coaching what they call compulsory levels. So that's like you're just getting into gymnastics levels. But I would say she helped bring me back a little too. But yeah, it was a tough time through all of that up and down.
a lot of adversity,
Yeah.
It made you stronger. So once you're like, all right, I'm back at this. I'm back in like my element. How did the college journey go?
Oh, so the college journey, like when I got into college, like that first semester, so much fun. Like, because collegiate athletics is more than just like, okay, you're going to do your sport. It's like you have 500 other athletes at a similar level of you, and they're your new like best friends. So, getting to know all the other athletes at Sacramento State, it's in fact how I met my husband, was during that first semester. But as far as gymnastics wise, everything was going pretty good for the most part until I was tumbling one day, and I felt like I was tumbling on concrete. And I was like, something is not right. Like, and floor was my event, and tumbling was my thing. So when it fell off, I knew something was wrong. And my college coach was like, I think I know what it could be too. So I ended up having like a bone scan, and I had 4 stress fractures in my fibulas, in my shins, right on the outsides of my shins, and ended up redshirting and not competing my entire first year in college athletics. So that was a whole new experience to now, because I'd always chosen in the past, right, quitting. I chose that. And this was the time that my body chose for me.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, was it almost back to that feeling of who is Bethany now?
Yep, totally. I remember at the end of season, because like you checked out your leotards for the season, for the year. And I just remember, like, I think at the end of season, because all I would do at practice was like bounce on my back on trampoline, do as many like ab exercises as I could. Like you watch the team compete and train while you are on the sidelines. And I didn't know how to handle that at that age, at 18 years old. So that one moment where I like came back to my dorm room, and I just like threw my leotards on the ground and just like had a breakdown. I chose gymnastics again. I came back, and now I can't even do it. And now I'm waiting for these injuries to heal. So yeah, it was a very trying experience. And I did have times of like, should I even do this anymore? Because I knew the road back to getting back into gymnastics with those injuries would be tough as well.
When you were debating on this, like the history, you've always been like, I'm just going to quit it. I'm going to walk away. What made this time different, or was it not different just to say, I'm going to stay in this for the long haul?
Yeah, it was honestly the team and the environment. So like college gymnastics, I think you talked to a lot of gymnasts in college gymnastics, kind of reignited their passion for the sport again, because gymnastics in nature, when you're growing up, is very individual. It's a very individual sport, and you compete every meet. You get to college, and 6 people compete each event. So out of your team of 20, maybe 25, you're not always competing everything, because there's only 6 spots. And so it turns into a team sport where you have to realize that the 6 people that are chosen are the best at that moment to produce the score to get us the highest team score to win the meet. So I think that environment and building such close relationships with my teammates definitely impacted me wanting to be in gymnastics and staying in gymnastics as long as my body would let me.
For anyone right now that's like a gymnast that's going through that similar feeling, just they love the sport, but kind of lost in the mix. I guess they're lost in just how do I stay myself without losing myself in this whole process? What would be like your tips or your advice you could speak to your younger self?
All the things. But I think it's different stages. So I look at and I tell this to the athletes that I have the pleasure of working with now, but once you get in college, things are different, and your recruited team and recruited class is amazing athletes across the state, across the nation. So you're all at that high level. So 1, appreciate the fact that you made it to the college athletics level. 2, even when you're injured, show up in the best possible way that you can. Because, being an athlete, when you take away our sport, we feel lost, right? And we feel like a part of our heart is missing, and like, well, if I can't compete, then what am I doing? And it's drastic when you look at it now. You're like, wow, dramatic. But I wish, looking back, for those meets that I wasn't selected to compete, I would have showed up and been the best teammate I could have possibly been that day. I was going to be the best cheerleader for my, teammate who I knew had doubt in herself sometimes. I was going to be the best mat mover. I was going to bring forth the same energy had I been competing. And I think that is a total learning curve and maturity, of course. But I just encourage, as a student athlete, it's such a special experience between 4 to 5 years of your life. If you, are in it that long or through the duration of your college experience. So show up every day like it's the best experience, because there's not, and you can probably attest to this, there's not another setting that necessarily feels like this, like where you're a student and you're an athlete and you have a team and you're an adult-ish, but you're not adulting like in the real world. So appreciate the experience and just show up fully in every circumstance, no matter if that's you in the meet or in the game or on the sidelines.
I can relate to that. I think that's a great message right there. I wish I would have heard that when I was hurt. But once you bounce back, you got back from the stress fractures.
Mm-hmm.
How did it became like, all right, I'm about to make the most of this journey now. I'm about to really,
Yeah. So for anyone that has stress fractures, and for any athlete really that has an injury, I feel like for the most part it stays with you, right? Because you jump right into practicing however many hours. And so my stress fractures stayed with me through the rest of my collegiate experience. So it was pain management. And that's another aspect when you get older as an older athlete, older as in college, but you have to deal with pain management. And so that in itself is a whole nother level mentally to deal with, and being okay with, I used to have these skills, but now I have to perform these skills because that's what my body will allow me to do, and I'm going to compete the best with what I have. So that's the transition too. But the rest of my sophomore and junior year, I competed on floor mainly, and was taping my shins with KT tape. My mom said she used to come to meets and look at my legs and think that I look like a racing horse, because you know how they tape the horse's shins, and so that's what I looked like. And I had my ankles taped as well, so I was wearing a full boot of just tape and whatnot. So I was doing that. I was using laser on my shins for healing. I was trying everything and anything just to manage the pain so I could compete floor. And I competed some uneven bars in the mix there as well. But yeah, it was not as easy as it had been before. When I was very lucky through my club years where I didn't have a lot of huge injuries. Had minor injuries out here and there, but nothing like what I had experienced in college. So my stress fractures were with me all the way up until my last meet. And 3 meets before my last meet, I saw the doctor, and he was like, your fibulas are going to snap in half. They are so weak that he's like, I encourage that you don't compete and that you probably stop. And my 20-year-old self was like, it'll be fine, doctor. I have 3 meets left. It'll be okay. And he was like, well, I'm not flying, because he's gonna be out of town. And I'm not flying back from Chicago to do your surgeries then. So he's like, good luck. And anyway, I ended up competing my last meet at our WAC championships, so our conference championships. And my last routine was the best routine that I could have done at that time with my injury. and my shins. And then I had found out that I had torn my rotator cuff and labrum in my shoulder. So I was, my body was tapping out.
Oh man.
But I finished my routine and knew immediately that like it's good that I'm stopping, because that was my junior year and I still technically had 2 years of eligibility left, but my body chose this time around for me to be done with the sport. So I ended a little bit earlier than anticipated.
Your body is kind of said, all right, Bethany, it's time to hang it up. It's time to put it all away. How did you figure out what was next? Because you never knew about that life after.
Right. So thankfully in my college experience, I was very involved with the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, which exists at most all NCAA member institutions, and really had taken an interest in working in collegiate athletics or sports. So after I was done, so it was my junior or going into my senior year of college, I took every internship job that I possibly could, because I knew that I literally had never had a true job before, one that existed outside the 40 hours a week in the gym. So I hit the ground running, gaining experience so that one day I could work in sports in some capacity.
I love it. I have a similar story to that, so I can relate, because you're so into sports, you don't think about getting a job. Like, nah,
No.
this is my job here. So how did you land on her sports story? 'Cause I know that's like a big part of what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Like transition. So how did you land on that?
Yeah, so I hit the ground running with all those internships and jobs, and finally landed my first like full-time role in college athletics and fundraising after 10 internships. And that was the first time that I sat at a desk for 8 hours a day. And I was like, what is this? This is crazy. So I sit here the whole time. You totally have that adjustment where you're like, okay, this is a new world for me, especially coming from being an athlete. But I started noticing, through that job I had, and I held other positions in athletics, but there was always something that felt like it was missing, which naturally I was like, oh, it's just, gymnastics, you're without the sport now and you're becoming an adult. But I realized that I didn't fully process retiring or exiting gymnastics, because it kept coming back, and like 5 years later I was still missing my sport. What is this? Like, it would come back to me and hit me hard sometimes, which was really weird to me. So, upon leaving college athletics and, starting all of my professional development, getting my master's in sport management, I knew I always wanted to be tied to working with athletes. And I was like, well, what would I have wanted when I transitioned away from the sport? And I'd always wanted a place or platform to feel understood, or to talk to other athletes or other former athletes who left their sport as well, and just connect and relate and help each other in whatever way that we could, because we were all just navigating how to live this adulting life without that immense passion or commitment that we had like with our sport, because jobs are just different than your sport. And so I think that's a whole nother topic as well, not being defined by a sport or a job. So anyway, I had always wanted a place like a resource hub or something. And last May, I don't even know how I came across her sports story or the name, but I was like, I'm going to create a platform for women to connect after sport. And somehow came up with her sports story and started like my first Instagram post. So I like made an Instagram and posted like back in May 2018. I was like, okay, it's real now. So like you actually got to do something with it. So I started interviewing like my friends, my close friends who were also athletes, on their sports story, and would interview them and blog about it. And fast forward to now, I have, an Instagram and a website, hersportstory.org, where I have stories of former athletes, where I have some resource guides, and where I am working on a podcast of interviewing amazing women who are, doing phenomenal things with their life after sport. And so this platform has really, one, been such a blessing because I get to connect, and granted, that's a reason why I'm connecting with you, and we had the opportunity to meet through someone else, our good friend Deanna, who saw my platform or saw my Instagram and like reached out and was like, I have to meet you. We have to talk. So I've talked to so many amazing people just through starting this Instagram and connecting, because as you know, like for a while, there wasn't a place where athletes could go to connect. Granted, everyone was I can guarantee most athletes were feeling the void and feeling like they didn't have a place to go, even though they know other former athletes, like their teammates, but there wasn't a space designed for it. So that's where Her Sports Story kind of started, and it's evolved and is still evolving. But at the end of the day, I just want resources for athletes who have left their sport or moving on, or even like 10 years out of their sport, and realize like, I still don't feel that passion towards something, so to connect on all stages of life, and in that process, maybe help current athletes, like listen to a story of a former athlete and be like, oh, she felt that way too. Okay, it's normal. It's normal to feel burnout. It's normal to quit your sport twice and go back. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so empowering because you don't hear enough of these stories. You always hear about the stories on the mat, on the court, and like that. Mm-hmm. You don't really hear about behind the scenes that you have to battle in order to be the great athlete. So I think what you're doing is awesome, especially in a sport like gymnastics, where you don't hear enough about. Mm-hmm. How you manage the whole process. So props to you for taking this on. I love it.
Thank you, and just right back at you, the amazing work that you're doing, and you were at the forefront of this a few years ago. So I'm happy to have connected with you because we share very similar missions.
So what's next for you as you continue this journey with Her Sports Story?
Yeah, so there's still, as you start something new, you have all these ideas, and there's so many directions that you could go. But for the moment, I'm working as a athletics academic advisor at Sacramento State, and I have Her Sports Story as, this side beautiful, community that I'm building. But I have already connected with women, and we have created a mastermind, and we are planning retreats of sorts to, who these women are also helping athletes, are also in this space. So I think there's real magic there that'll happen. I just hope to continue to build bridges between sport and life after sport. And that looks like continuing to podcast, that looks like continuing to connect with people like yourself, and that looks like just sharing my experiences and my story, so that in hopes someone or another former athlete can relate. So I have a lot of things going on, but big picture is that we have a tribe of people that can be a resource, be a support for former athletes transitioning out.
Love it. Big thing ahead for what you're doing. So Bethany, so right now, last question for you. So where can we find you? Social media, website?
Yeah. So my website is www.hersportsstory.org. And my Instagram is at her sports story.
I always have a big feeling about what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. You as well.
It's really, really unique, and I think an area that's not talked about enough. So props to you. And thank you for doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yo, thanks for listening to this episode of the 9 Point Started With a Dream podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, leave a review. We would love to hear your thoughts. You can find more athlete-driven content at 9point.com. Till the next episode, you're only one opportunity away. Peace.